Kowloon's Curse. Lost Report. Okay, go find it then. A standalone prequel to the currently unreleased Kowloon's Curse by Studio Notes. That's a short but surreal turn-based RPG which might seem simple on the surface, but is brimming with mesmerizing and morbid mysteries to unravel as you begin pulling at the strings. Slip into the skin of your average goon-maxing henchman for a notorious mafia group within the city. This is Tony, or Mr. Manslaughter, as he's referred to by this possibly overworked office worker currently speaking to him within his dreams. This individual, John C., is here to aid in our orientation, which really just means answering a couple simple and normal questions like how you'd deal with a faulty tape drive while hard at work in the programming department, or how you'd respond to getting lost within the infinite vending machine maze on floor 98 while on your way to the break room. All very common workplace occurrences one must be ready for. The outcome of your responses to these three questions depends on the texture behind them, and I'd personally recommend focusing on a single column, which you could go and do right now, because this prequel is completely free to play. If at any point throughout this video you desire to play this game and uncover its secrets yourself, I'd highly encourage you to do so. Anyways, with the survey completed, the dream begins to fade away, along with any memories of it as Tony wakes up for... We start off in Tony's respectable studio apartment. Believe it or not, there's actually quite a bit to do around here, such as catching up on the latest hit TV shows, or booting up the PC to check the news. Who wouldn't want to read up about some homeless addict getting barbecued while stripping copper wires, or how another horrific accident occurred within the Dog District's Bolorama, resulting in the death of 13 people. Thankfully, it was a 1 in a million freak accident. Again. And while on the topic of the news, that damn mayor is getting too political nowadays, if you ask me. But if none of that triggers those dopamine receptors, you can always navigate your way to the threads of Kowloon-chan. That's where the real heat is at. Of course, all those activities are very cool and neat, but as a respectable mafia henchman, we've got work to do. So it's time to head down the lift and take to the streets of the Dragon District, one of many districts making up the fictional Kowloon City. Much like that which inspired it, it's a mostly lawless place, run primarily by the many gangs residing within the towering structures making up its walls. A city drenched in crime, drug abuse, and much more. So let's do our best to keep it that way. Especially since it seems like our boy Tony here has been out of commission, according to this phone call. Gotta make up for lost time and hit the club. But first things first, a good goon always moves in pairs. So we need to go pick up our partner, which wouldn't take nearly as long if not for an unexpected confrontation by an intoxicated individual. Time for some turn-based RPG basics. Attack, use an item, call your opponent a bitch to possibly make them cry, the usual RPG mechanics. Regardless of the method, this self-proclaimed alcoholic is bested so we can weave through the crowded streets and slip into the smoke-filled interior of Sergio's place of residence. And this right here is our boy Sergio, who's currently zooted off that smoke-cane, a highly addictive psychedelic that's infested Kowloon City. He's also blasting his latest mixtape, which is, a bit of an acquired taste. Now, one could gently explain how we've got a job to do and maybe even take a moment to sit back and relax, reminiscing about a time long ago when they were just kids in a dingy little room, and Sergio's music was still straight up garbage. Then hit that smoke-cane pipe so hard it gives you a stat boost. Or, instead, pick every wrong dialogue option possible and piss off Sergio so much he decides to end this game earlier than anticipated. But if all goes well, we'll be riding the subway while listening to all the colorful conversations that come with it. The rising use of smoke-cane, movie spoilers, and dead bodies in the walls. Oh hey, it's our stop. This is the Rooster District, the second district of 3 that's available to us, and the location of our destination. Club Echoes. We need to ask around about the briefcase, but we can also take a moment to get ourselves a drink and enjoy the stat boost that comes with it. Might even humor our boy Sergio and convince the DJ to play his hot new mixtape. Needless to say, the crowd is loving it, especially this guy right here. But now it's time to lock in and listen in on the conversation between these two sharply dressed goons. Turns out their boss has the briefcase and he's in the back area of the club, which is all we need to know. Unfortunately, the door to get there is blocked by a rather strong-looking phone booth. Now here's where your stats really come into play. Depending on their level, you'll gain access to powerful skills or new ways of interacting with NPCs and maybe even the environment itself if you've maxed them out. But who knows, really? This is why it's often best to focus on one out of the three rather than diversifying your stat portfolio. So you could engage in combat and utilize your battle tendency to deliver a devastating beatdown, or use your nautical affinity to hack the internals of this phone booth. You could also just avoid combat outright by channeling your mythopoetic worldview and pulling out some Jedi mind tricks, which just means intensely staring down the guard until he gets creeped out. Regardless of the method, we've entered the Backrooms. No, not those ones, stop clapping. The Egyptian tomb kind of backrooms, with yet another obstacle blocking the way forward. It's a complex, challenging puzzle of sorts that'll require rigorous mental effort in order to solve. Or just kick the door down, hack it open, maybe even gather your spiritual energy and shift the very fabric of reality to make it so the door was and always has been unlocked. But even with that hurdle surpassed, a final guard stands in our way. That is, until he simply ceases to exist once I hit him with that Philosophy 101 textbook summary. Through the doors is a high-ranking and incredibly loyal executive of the Manzanelli Syndicate, who won't be handing over the briefcase without a fight. A fight in which Sergio misses half the shots he does take, and my reality-altering trickery is ineffective, but he's still beaten in the end. Then Sergio wants to display his incredible inaccuracy once more, shooting the damn briefcase we came all the way to get before finishing off the man as well. Not necessarily what I'd call a job well done, or done at all to be exact, but we swing by Mr. Chen's for a well-deserved bite to eat. Bite being an understatement because Sergio proceeds to order an ungodly amount of food. There's a reason you're given the option to outright skip this dialogue. Then we're presented with the illusion of choice. The small fries are inevitable. You just get to decide what insult you'd like to come as the side. And then, in a shocking turn of events, they somehow fuck up his order, so he takes his leave, which leaves us to make our way back home alone. 2. Lost in New York. We can take a moment to admire the fellas who are hard at work delivering packages for the Kowloon Post, and maybe talk to hostage situation. The individual who provided Tony medicine while he was out of commission. But ultimately, we'll end up back in our apartment and ready for a nice, long nap. Or not. What's a fella gotta do in this city to get a normal dream? I'd settle for one that even somewhat makes sense. But anyways, looks like we've gotta traverse the not-so-infinite vending machine maze and have a quick chat with Mr. Malfunction here. We get a choice of one question, which answers very little. But the provided stat boost is nice. And besides this strange door that's not supposed to be opened at this point in time, that's it. So it's back through the maze and back to bed so we can wake up for... The second day starts off much like the first. There's news of a shooting down at Club Echoes with one found dead, along with 2 possible suspects. And the police apparently busted and shut down some crazy hitman website. But that's enough news for the day. It's time to head down the lift and pick up the phone where the voice on the other side is less than pleased with our little fuck-up yesterday. Seems we won't be getting a paycheck anytime soon, but at least there's another job lined up. And it's right here in the Dragon District. The local mahjong parlor hasn't been paying rent to their landlord, who just so happens to be the mysterious boss of our organization, the Inspector. Of course, that doesn't mean this will be an easy job, still requiring an invitation to get inside, and Sergio is no help at all, freezing up at the sight of the young woman at the entrance. Asking around eventually leads to the third available district, being the Sheep District, where a washed-up mahjong enjoyer named Bibbo will provide his old invitation, but only after we deliver a package to this guy who's dressed like a Roman soldier in the Rooster District. With that Amazon delivery roleplay finished and invitation in hand, we can enter inside, making our way through the parlor that's packed full of tables and people likely gambling away their life savings. The people in the far back having fallen so far into debt that they're forced to imagine themselves playing mahjong. Now there's one last hurdle before we can make the owner Lao Song pay up, which comes in the form of a highly skilled guard who's not only completely immune to any physical skills, but also lacks cybernetics to be hacked. He even refuses to smoke, which would normally leave an enemy defenseless for 2 turns. Luckily, his D-phone can be hacked, and his 4TB folder of fellas pictures can be leaked online, making him sob uncontrollably. Unsurprisingly, Sergio proceeds to miss every single fucking shot he takes, besides the final one, taking the kill for himself. Wait. He had 3 cigarettes in his pocket, that lying son of a bitch. But finally, we're face to face with Lao Song, the ballsy bastard who not only didn't pay up, but was also selling smokeane behind the inspector's back. And he's a potted plant. Despite his pathetic whimpering about how he'll get the money, it seems like Sergio isn't taking any of that shit. In fact, Sergio isn't taking shit from anyone as he starts crashing out. And I truly do mean crashing out on a level I didn't even think was possible. One thing leads to another, and we're facing off as the mahjong parlor is ablaze around us. He's left his neural inlink unprotected, so I flood it with malware, and then true to his nature, he misses his first shot. I won't sugarcoat it, he didn't stand a chance. One one-sided beatdown later, we're given the choice to spare or execute him. But given our surroundings, I doubt our choices will change his fate. Unsurprisingly, a ringing phone is waiting for us outside. I get the feeling this won't end with just a couple months of no pay. With no other options, it's time to hop on the metro for one last ride. The empty compartment, devoid of passengers and conversation, gives ample time for the looming feeling of dread to sink in. The same can be said of the inspector's office building, with likely priceless paintings lining the walls, not exactly giving off a welcoming vibe. The elevator ride feels like it goes on forever as more memories flash through Tony's mind. Memories of the boy he used to know, now the man he's left behind in that mahjong parlor. And so comes the end. Confronted by the inspector for our countless costly mistakes that might not have actually been Tony's fault, but I doubt he's open for discussion. Despite how bleak this all might seem, one must look on the bright side. It could have been worse. You could have, hypothetically, gone through the entire first day in much the same way, but instead of going straight to bed, you'd take a moment to browse the threads of Kowloon, finding one comment in particular about seeking out a man in an alleyway within the Sheep District, who upon meeting would mention a certain sketchy website where you can hire hitmen to take out any target of your choice for a small fee. Deciding to deal with all these problems at their source, Sergio's name is entered and an almost identical yet slightly different dream plays out as you rest up for the second day. Upon waking up and picking up the phone, the voice on the other end gives the same scolding and job as usual, but adds that we should check up on Sergio, who hasn't been taking calls. The reason for this becoming blatantly apparent as we step into his place. And so the second day plays out in a similar fashion, minus Sergio's company as we gain entry into the mahjong parlor. Though while fighting the guard, it feels as if reality itself fractures and shifts, like something is missing from this encounter. But whatever that was, it doesn't stop us from banishing his ass to the Shadow Realm and quickly retrieving the money from Lao Song without any issues. Unlike last time, it's a job well done. Unfortunately, the one thing the inspector seems to hate more than fuck-ups who lose him copious amounts of money is a backstabbing rat who had his own partner murdered. So, as Tony lays here, beaten and bruised with his story coming to an end, one might think that this was a rather tragic conclusion. The empaths among you might even believe that despite his personality, even Sergio deserved better than this. If only there was a way to fight against the very fate that seems laid out for these two men. This is the point I remind you that this game is completely free to play and bring up the fact I've purposefully avoided talking about a majority of the side content that's available to the player. Consider this a final spoiler warning, along with a strong recommendation to go and play this game for yourself. Now then, either you're still here because you'd rather keep listening to my yapping, or one of those dedicated few who've now completed the game and decided to return anyways. Either way, I appreciate it. So let's keep this wheel of tragedy spinning. And what better fuel for the machine that spins the wheel of tragedy than yet another flashback? Once more featuring young Sergio and Tony, this time playing a game of hide-and-seek with their childhood friend Amani. And after both Sergio and Amani are found, she tells the two boys to wait at the park while she gets ice cream, which is the last time they both saw her alive. Must have been one ice-cold killer. So, we're back here once again. But John has no desire to watch Tony suffer the same fate once more. He's willing to risk his job in order to help, which comes in the form of nearly maxed out stats if accepted. Or just answer those same 3 questions again. Regardless of the choice, things will be different this time. The dream once again fades from Tony's mind as he wakes up, but there's this lingering sense of familiarity, like this has all happened before, and thus begins a repeat of day 1, heading down the lift and giving greetings to Ming as he smokes a fat cigarette. Never seen a more badass cat in my life. We have a quick chat with hostage situation and buy his last beer before receiving these same familiar orders through the phone. And like clockwork, the same certified alcoholic starts a fight, but true to his title, he's subdued with a bottle of beer. Rather than going straight to Sergio's this time, we can take a minute to explore what the Dragon District has to offer, like randomly entering a building and looting this box of money and cigarettes, along with interacting with a book that very obviously stands out. There's also this suspicious woman standing here who insults Tony, I think. The phone number she provides leads to the most obvious example of a gift card scam I've ever seen. This is what they'd show in phone security safety class. So naturally, I provide the numbers on the back of the gift cards, and upon realizing it's a scam, seek out assistance from one of Hostage Situation's connections, which eventually leads to a rough estimate of the scammer's location somewhere in the Rooster District. So might as well pick up Sergio before heading over. Speaking of Sergio, it seems like he can tell something isn't quite right by the look on Tony's face. Thankfully, be it through aggressive persuasion or telling Sergio about a terrible future seen in a smoking-induced fever dream, Tony manages to convince him to lock in, keep his gun in his pants, and most importantly, not take another fat hit of smocaine. So with that said, we can take a trip over to the Rooster District. But before getting to clubbing, I've got a personal matter that needs to be dealt with. It seems like that wretched scammer is right behind this locked door. But luckily, this poor guy who was locked up and forced to scam people can open the door for the small cost of 1 cigarette, which was a lie. But for a measly $1,000, he'll open it, which I don't have. If only there was some way to rapidly multiply my monetary situation. No, specifically with the slight chance of falling into crippling debt. Wait a second. That's right, baby. It's gambling. You know what they say, you never lose money, except when you do. So after a short session of good financial choices, I've got the money, with plenty to spare. But in a shocking twist, the guy was lying again, and the door wasn't even real to begin with. He straight up Looney Tunes my ass. It's only then that I notice the very obviously fake wall and proceed to give him the $1,500 ass beating he paid for, with the added bonus of getting $5,000. This means a more observant individual could turn 500 to 5,000 with this one easy trick. With that debt settled and pockets full, we enter Club Echoes once more, listening in on that same conversation, but this time also receiving an empty phone card from this guy, which coincidentally works as a perfect bribe for the phone booth blocking the path. After one challenging puzzle for those who can't read an analog clock, plus a quick fight with the guard, we're back in the back room, confronting the man with the briefcase. This fight plays out in a similar way, with the exception that Sergio, by some miracle of God or lack of smocaine flowing through his system, actually hits all his shots. It's only after the fight that Tony, through what appears to cause him great physical pain, manages to convince Sergio not to finish the man off and just grab the briefcase as we make our escape. All in all, I'd say things are really looking up, and Tony's looking down as he passes out on the spot. It's that dream again, but something's off. No Sergio, no vending machine maze, and Mr. Malfunction is nowhere to be seen. Just that strange door and a voice behind it. Stepping inside, Tony is greeted by what appears to be a pale man in a strange black bodysuit. He seems to know this isn't our first time going through all this, along with our efforts to save Sergio, and ourselves, which seemingly goes against the natural order of things and isn't very appreciated by this figure named Kowloon. Unfortunately for him, I don't think we'll heed his final warning. Waking up, we find ourselves at Sergio's place, assumedly dragged here by Sergio after passing out. He really does care. Maybe. Anyways, I swing by the local Easy Mart to pick up some food for that chill-ass cat Ming, which leads him to straight up chillin' in the apartment as we settle in for the night. With sleep comes the dreams, but this time it doesn't mirror any place we know. Tony finds himself in the middle of what appears to be a war zone, or the aftermath of one, with a figure off in the distance that we make our way to, traveling along the water's edge. Getting close enough, one might be able to guess who this figure is, and these suspicions are proven true when she speaks. It's Amani, and she's been here for, well, she doesn't know how long. She wants Tony to take care of Sergio, which was already sort of a given, since his mistakes seem to be shared with the group. Also, she got a gift for us that we'll learn about in the morning. And so morning comes, with Tony finding in his hand a mahjong tile with the words invitation written on it. This means we can head straight to the mahjong parlor without delay. Is what I would have said if not for this particular post on Kowloon about getting into an invite-only church, which clearly takes priority. Upon actually meeting up with the guy in his dingy little place within the Rooster District, it turns out he's more than willing to share his knowledge. But in exchange, he desires a book. A book that just so happens to only be found within the Church in the Ninth Finger's forbidden library. So we'll have to become religious and sneak inside with the invitation he's provided. Returning back to the Dragon District and entering the church, we can be sworn in after signing a massive stack of papers and taking what is basically a personality quiz, but spiritual or something. After that, we must attend the latest sermon, the subject of which is rather uninteresting. However, the man giving the speech must be the second coming of Criss Angel, because he not only begins to levitate while speaking, but also physically clips through the ceiling itself in what I can only imagine is ascension. Truly eye-opening stuff right there. Now, in order to pay off the $1 million entrance fee, we'll be given an assortment of jobs. The first of which is lovingly guiding 3 possible new members into joining a church through whatever means necessary. The next assignment, after flawlessly completing the previous task, is to find a journalist who's been spreading false information. I doubt I need to tell you how dealing with him went. With that done, it turns out we've been doing so good that the church's great leader wishes to personally see us, which is followed by immediately getting put to sleep and waking up in the great leader's office. Forget the second coming of Criss Angel, that's just straight up him. He rambles on about the origins of their religion, like how the blind one was impaled by 9 soldiers with 9 spears, and how the blind one's disciple, who was thought to have betrayed him, was truly just doing what needed to be done to spread the faith. Then Tony gets shot and goes to hell. We get to meet the aforementioned disciple before getting sent right back up and giving the great leader a heart attack after he learns we got to meet his religious waifu. Then the church begins to self-destruct once the leader's death is detected, which is a common feature in all current megachurches. It's what all that donation money goes towards. Now, before we can flee from this currently crumbling building, we need to slip down into the basement, which is filled with prisoners who look damn near mummified. Plus that one journalist. I can't believe such a thing was beneath this morally righteous church. I suppose we could release them while down here, but what we're really here for lies within this vast forbidden library. After retrieving what appears to be a very special book, we might as well take this chance to do some light reading on the ancient language before finally making our escape. On the way over to the Rooster District, the now released captives can be seen. Maybe we did a good thing. With the book finally delivered as requested, we can ask this man all sorts of questions, but I think it's about time we get this story back on track. So it's back on the metro and back to the mahjong parlor once again. And after a quick confrontation with the guard, we're once again face to face with this damn potted plant. And once again, despite our best efforts, Sergio crashes out. And once again, Tony gets fucking shot. Welcome to Placebo. Can't say I expected what appears to be the Afterlife to be sponsored by Newport cigarettes, but it is what it is. And what it is appears to be some sort of ethereal airport, at which we've got a flight to catch, so it's time to go get a plane ticket. A truly authentic experience, complete with a printer failing to print the ticket and computers that take ages to do even basic tasks. Before heading out, we can soak up the sun in the garden, or contemplate how everything is finite in the spiral. Unsurprisingly, there's even a smoking lounge where the father of a certain cosplayer can be found. But that's enough lounging. It's off to the terminal where a familiar face is waiting. Amani is here once again to give a few words of encouragement and to see us off. Unfortunately, we can't stay long, so it's time to board. Once more, we're greeted by what appears to be a ruined city in another dreamlike sequence, with Tony appearing as his younger self. And now it seems like it's time to face the consequences of not heeding the warning of this man who is looking as pixelated as ever. Or it would be, if not for that strange stone statue we saw previously seemingly intervening. With that assist, it comes down to just the two of us. Sergio and Tony in a flat expanse of water as a beautiful sunset lights up the clouds in the background. It's here that Sergio lays bare his feelings, all the emotions that he's had built up in his heart. But now isn't the time for words. The only way to truly get through to him is through action. So the two men clash again and again, until finally... they both splash down into the shallow water, simply laying there, a stalemate of sorts. But once we're brought back to the mahjong parlor, Sergio is unable to protest as Tony takes the lead and gets the money from Lao Song. With money in hand, we'll have to take the metro to reach the drop-off point. And Sergio is sitting on our side for the first time. It's not much, but it feels significant. Reaching the Rooster District, there's a man waiting for us near Club Echoes. And surprisingly, it's a familiar face. Turns out he's trying to turn his life around, because booze is expensive. Good for him. He pulls Sergio aside for a second, before the two of us take a minute to have a smoke. The two men share a real heart-to-heart, discussing things like how Lao Song called himself the Dragon Lord yet turned out to be a potted plant. But on a more serious note, it turns out Sergio has cleared his debt with his latest job, and will be able to focus on his music full-time. He gives his thanks before starting to walk away, but he doesn't leave without insulting us one last time. Gotta say, he's an alright guy. I wonder if we'll ever see him around. However, those thoughts are interrupted by the ringing of a nearby phone. But before I answer it, I get distracted by this beetle chuffing back a fat dart. I mean, goddamn, that thing is basically the same size as its body. Anyways, the inspector wants to meet with us at a temple in the Dragon District, one that couldn't previously be entered. A temple dedicated to a deity said to rule over time itself. And there's even stories of this deity reversing time for people that have died too soon. But that's not the point. The inspector is proud of the work we've done, surpassing all his expectations. So much so, he thinks Tony here is the most capable for completing a very important task. Needless to say, it looks like Tony Manslaughter has another job to do. But that job is for another time, likely in the full game Kowloon's Curse. Now, was that everything this prequel has to offer? Not quite. There may or may not be a day-night cycle that's entirely reliant on your computer's clock, with unique encounters that only appear under the light of the moon. But I'll leave that up to you to discover, along with any other bits of side content I didn't cover within this video. With all that said and done, I'd like to thank you for watching this video to the end, and of course I'd like to thank all my patrons for their continued support, with extra special thanks to Rody, Mirloon, Yuval, Michael Bradley, BeanOS, Wobble, EP Sprite, and Blue Stop Sign. Patrons get their name at the end of the video updates, access to these videos a day early, and more. If nothing else though, consider liking and subscribing for future content, which definitely won't take months to come out. See you then.